Hey Reddit, when did your something's not right here gut feeling ever save you? My mom dropped my 3-year-old brother off at daycare before she had to work in the morning. When she got to work, she had this terrible feeling something was wrong with him. She ended up leaving work and driving to the daycare. She found the daycare lady inside sleeping, while the daycare kids, including my brother, were running around the pool. My brother never went back to that daycare again. Call it chance or call it whatever you want. This is a mother's power. I can't explain it, science can't explain it, and they never will. Story 2. About 10 years ago, working security at a site about 50 miles from home. Got off shift at midnight and didn't bother to change out of uniform because I was only going to stop for gas. 2 stations in the town I was working in were open after midnight, but it slipped my mind as I drove past the first one. Pulled into the other. Same brand, same gas price, same sort of dump entirely. And I just didn't like something about it. Nobody else around but the clerk that I could see, and I decided to just go back to the other one. Topped off and headed back out of town. I get close to the station again. 3 city cop cars, 2 deputies, and a state trooper are outside, blocking the road with guns drawn. Turns out a city cop walked in on a robbery. Dude put a bullet in his vest, and the store owner knocked the robber out cold with a bat before the cop could recover enough to get his gun out. That would have been me. In a uniform with a nice, shiny badge, but no body armor. Story 3. I went to the hospital with shortness of breath and my heart racing. They did a chest x-ray, blood test for blood clots, ECG, and a few other tests, but all came back normal. After observing me overnight, everything still looked good. Oxygen saturation was perfect, my heart rate was a bit elevated but nothing too crazy, and it seemed that it was likely leftover symptoms from a bad virus that I'd had a week or so earlier. The ER doc asks me how I would feel if they sent me home, but I just had a bad feeling about it all. I told him as such and that I had no real basis for it except I just felt off. He said fair enough. Let's try one more test, and if that comes back negative, we'll send you up to general medicine and see if they can track something down. That test was a VQ scan. That found, despite all other tests showing no result for blood clots, I actually had a whole bunch in both lungs. I ended up with a diagnosis of unprovoked bilateral pulmonary embolism, and I'm on blood thinners for life. Super grateful for both the bad feeling and the ER doc who was willing to listen to it. If you followed the channel, you'll know there's a good bit with a lot of medical stuff in a row. This has taken me right back there, but this is a doctor that listens, and that makes me happy. Sometimes the body just seems to know when something is wrong, and that gut feeling can save your life. Story 4. My aunt told me a story about my dad who greatly dislikes his sister and is an all-around jerk 98% of the time. He called her out of the blue one night while she was in college. She answered. He said he didn't know why, but he had this urge to call her to make sure she was okay. She told him she was fine and thanked him for calling to check on her. She never told anyone except me and hopefully a therapist or two, but she was holding the bottle of pills she was planning to unalive herself with right when he called her. 20-some years later, she's very happy with her decision to live. Story 5. Not me, but my mother saved my grandfather's life when he had a stroke in his chair in their living room. We had all started to walk around the development when my mother, after about 50 to 75 meters from the house, said, "I'm gonna go back and check on Dad." I went with her and I nearly witnessed my grandfather die. He was on the chair, conscious but unable to move or talk, just looking at my mother with bulging eyes. She called 911 once and then twice when she felt that they were running late. Ambulance came, got him on the stretcher, but it was too wide to fit out the door. We ended up tearing the door frame off to get him out. Because he was conscious, he actually remembers the ride to the hospital. He told us later that he heard the driver or someone say, "There is not a chance that this guy lives." That was when I was around 5 to 6 years old, and he's still alive to this day, more than a decade later. At my mother's funeral, part of his speech was about how without my mother's actions, he wouldn't have been able to spend time with her during her final years of life. And for that, he is eternally grateful. Story 6. It didn't save me, but saved a friend. A big group of friends and I were walking home from an event in a town we weren't used to. It was night and hardly anyone was around, empty streets and all that. We were walking down a sidewalk that had high fences next to it, so when you turned around a corner, whatever was around it was out of sight. One of the girls fell behind, distracted by her phone, I think, and I noticed. So I started drifting off behind as well to become sort of a midway point between her and the group. Soon, we were nearing where we were staying. Our group rounded a corner and then started making their way into the yard where our living quarters were. I saw a car drive past us and then turn the corner down the street the girl was still on. As soon as I saw it, I suddenly got this suspicious, awful feeling. So I stopped and went back to the corner to keep an eye on the friend. The car drove past her, stopped, did a complete U-turn, and slowly started creeping up behind/alongside her. She was still on her phone and wasn't noticing a thing. I stepped out from behind the corner and started walking towards her. The car sped off quickly as soon as the driver saw me. It scares me that someone could have just grabbed her. None of us would have seen a thing. It would have been one of those cliche movie moments where you turn around and realize a member of the group is missing. To compound that potential tragedy, she had just gotten engaged a few weeks prior. I think the fact that we had worked with some safe houses in the area that discussed human trafficking probably aided in me being on high alert. And the area we were in was known for that sort of thing already. Admittedly, I do think she should have been more careful if you knew that the area, well, if she knew that the area that you were in was known for that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you never know when something that seems small like that is going to end up being major consequence, you know? So I'm not trying to potential victim blame here or anything. I just think it's probably a good idea to pay a little more attention if the place you're in has just talked about human trafficking, or like somewhere has talked about human trafficking in the place you're in. I don't know. Anyway, huge on OP, good instincts, and I'm glad you followed through with them. Story 7. I was 15 years old and my mom dropped me off at McDonald's to get breakfast while she went across the street to get Starbucks. It was a shopping mall in suburbia and we were on our way to pick up a new kitten a few hours away. Instead of walking the 100 yards to my mom, I sat outside waiting for her to pick me up. Teenagers, I guess. As I'm standing there, a guy in an old station wagon with 2 kids in the back starts talking to me. He asks me where I'm going and I say whatever town it was. He says he's going there too with his kids and asks if I want to come. I tell him, no, my mom is across the street, and he comes closer. My gut is saying something is off, so I see a random woman walk out of Starbucks. I point to her and I say, that's my mom right there. He freaked out and left really quick. I still remember those 2 kids in the back seat. They looked so off. I wonder to this day if they're okay. Story 8. Not mine, but my dad's. I was downstairs helping him with some woodworking when I was 10 or 11. He went to run a 2x4 through the table saw when he noticed I was at his elbow rather than behind him. He stopped and told me to never stand behind a board when it's going through the saw in case it gets thrown. I thought he was being overly cautious, and I didn't have as good of a view from behind him, but whatever, I got behind him. He flipped on the saw and ran the board through. He only got 1/3 of the way through, though, when the blade hit a knot and flung the 2x4 hard enough to crash against the wall 10 feet behind. If I hadn't moved, it would have hit me square in the chest and probably would have unalived me. Story 9. I was an unpopular kid, and I always wanted to go to sleepovers, but it rarely happened. In 6th or 7th grade, I get invited to this girl's house for a birthday party. I am friendly with her, but not close. I go to her house and I feel weird right away. Her mom and stepdad were sitting in the living room smoking, but being perfectly friendly. The whole night I couldn't shake this feeling of oppressiveness, despair, and danger. I spent the evening keeping my guard up and keeping an eye out for the entire family without any idea why. At night, the girl begs me to spend the night. Even though it hurt to say no and I could tell she was desperate, I lied. Told her my parents wouldn't let me, but in fact, over the phone they said that they would. A couple of months later, a student told me she had left the school and moved because her stepfather would touch her at night in her bed. I think of her often and hope she wasn't hurt that night and hope she's doing better, but I am glad I got out. I gotta say, it's kind of good that OP doesn't blame themselves here. It's almost like a kind of survivor's guilt that you can get in situations like these where you're like, oh, if I'd done this, I could have saved her for one night, maybe, or something like that. But in reality, you weren't safe either, and your gut told you that, so it's good you listened, I think. I also hope she's doing better and the stepfather faced some sort of consequences, preferably pretty hard ones. Story 10. My dad had to go to court to settle a way overdue payment for the place he worked at. He's going to take me with him so I can be more exposed to the adult world, so to speak. However, that meant he would have had to leave the office back door unlocked so the rest of the staff could clock in. He suddenly didn't feel right about it and decided to have me man the office instead. He got T-boned outside the courthouse on the passenger side of the car that day. The car was totaled, and if I had been there, I would have been severely hurt. Story 11. A guy definitely roofied my drink at a bar. He was totally mild-mannered and not creepy at all. Asked me how to sign up for karaoke and pick a song. Sat beside me and talked casually, didn't touch me once. But then he pointed to something behind my head to distract me. I looked away and looked back at him, and he was looking away from me into the crowd of people. It was a really stupid way to distract someone. To point and then act like you didn't do anything as opposed to pretending to have thought you saw something. Then I saw him screwing one of those little canisters on his keychain shut. I asked him what he kept in there to call him out. He was cold and expressionless as he began to slowly twist it back open and said there was nothing in there. I stopped drinking my drink and he performed his song. Then I sang and he took off immediately after. It was really screwed up and I'm glad he wasn't very smooth, or I don't know what could have happened. What always freaked me out was how normal he seemed, before he became suddenly cold and robotic when I called him out on the canister thing. But it made me realize, Of course, an assaulter would seem normal. That's how they get close enough to you to attack you. It just sucks that people like this exist. I don't know what else to say. Like, not only is it just you're a terrible person for doing it, it's just so pathetic too. Like, for real, anyone who does this is just, I don't know, insane loser in my books. It is an interesting point about how normal he seemed, though. It's probably a sociopathic kind of thing. Those sorts of people can be extremely charismatic. Get your guard down. It's just freaky. It's just weird. Hate it. Story 12. I was falling asleep in the car. My friend was driving. All of a sudden, he stops talking and I think to myself, what the hell? Something's not right. I open my eyes and turn over. Dude was having a seizure. His legs were stiff and his foot was on the gas. We were going downhill towards a busy intersection. We had the red, so I slammed the car in park and pulled the keys out. Car starts rattling, making a weird noise, but it gained so much momentum it was still rolling down. So I grabbed the steering wheel and veered us off the road into the side of an abandoned building. I opened his door and climbed over him. I was able to get him out and turn him on his side. The police officer that showed up was like, "You couldn't have done this in a safer fashion." I just said, "Sorry." But inside I was like, "Screw you, buddy." Like, come on, officer. OP probably just saved a lot of lives, if not just a lot of damages. I feel like you shouldn't criticize how they handled an incredibly frightening situation. Oh no, your brain didn't weigh the cost benefits of every single possibility? Come on, OP, it's like you were in a life or death situation or something. Story 13. When I was young, around 8 or 9 probably, I lived 3 blocks from a convenience store. It was the early 90s. My best friend and I convinced our parents to let us walk to the store alone to get some snacks. Important to add that the 2 blocks closest to the store are connected, but the 3rd block we lived on was its own unconnected neighborhood. So anyway, as we're walking back from the store, we're coming up on the 1st street and a truck drives by and stops on the side of the road in between the 1st and 2nd block on our side of the road. I stopped and told my friend we should go down the 1st street and go through the neighborhood, then come back out the 2nd street and then head to our 3rd street to avoid the truck. She thought I was being stupid, but I refused to keep walking on the main street, so she followed me down the 1st road. We are now in the 1st neighborhood, and about halfway between the 1st and 2nd street, we see the truck slowly driving down the 2nd street into the neighborhood. The driver sees us and immediately slams on the gas and turns his truck towards us on the street. We ran and hid in some bushes further into the neighborhood for about 10 minutes. We heard the truck driving back and forth for about the first 5, and then it was quiet. So we started making our way out of the neighborhood towards the 2nd street again. Suddenly, here comes the truck, slowly. Sees us and guns it towards us again. We jumped over a fence into a backyard and started pounding on the back door. By the way, this is a Tuesday, middle of the day during summer vacation. Most people are at work. But miraculously, a man and a woman opened the door and let us in. The woman had just had a baby like a week before, so they were home on leave. They called the cops and the mom and the man went outside. He said the truck drove by and the man saw him standing outside and sped out of the neighborhood. Cops and my mom showed up minutes later and we gave a description and never heard anything about it again. Our parents just drove us to the convenience store from then on. My mom still talks about it to this day and how shocked she was that I had such a strong intuition at my age. I guarantee you, OP, your mom thinks about that day a lot. I mean, what parent wouldn't? The day they almost lost their child, but simultaneously being so proud of their child, I'm sure, for knowing what to do and saving themselves, really. Huge props to the people who opened the door too. It must have been incredibly confusing, though. They're just in the house like, "Honey, is that someone knocking on our back door? Don't we have a fence?" Story 14. I'd gone to this bar back home with a few friends, and afterwards everyone was supposed to go to this house party. I was game to go from the moment I was invited. Halfway through the night, though, I had this gut feeling to not go. I told my best friend that she shouldn't go, but she insisted that she wanted to because there were a few cute guys there. I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't go, but she talked me into it. When we got in my car to head to the party, the gut feeling was worse. I grew up around cars and drive a manual. My best friend is completely clueless when it comes to cars, so I deliberately grinded the gears and jerked the car and made it stall, acting like something was wrong. I pretended to try to fix what wasn't broken, and after about 15 to 20 minutes of fixing my car, cops and fire trucks followed by EMS flew by us. I fixed my car but told my best friend that I just wasn't feeling well, and she agreed, and said my car breaking down ruined her mood, so we went back to my place to watch movies. About an hour after getting home, we got a call from a friend of ours saying that the girl who owned the house and who was throwing the party was cheating on her husband who was deployed, and he came back to surprise her and caught her in bed with his buddy. Dude pulled a gun and started shooting at this girl and his friend while everyone else fled the house. Story 15. I was in the Amazon as the end to a 3-month solo trip around Latin America. Wanted to enjoy one last walk through the jungle before leaving, so left my jungle lodge around 8 a.m. to walk down a small river nearby. I stop and close my eyes to listen to the sounds as the jungle is super loud with crickets, birds, insects, etc. Almost immediately, I got a weird feeling and felt really uncomfortable, which was weird because up until then I'd felt only peaceful and happy. When I opened my eyes, I realized everything had gone completely quiet, which was definitely not normal and not something I had experienced in the other rainforests I'd been to. It was bizarre. I immediately felt that I had to leave, and fast. After I dipped and got back to the jungle lodge, I told the tour guide what happened. He said it usually only gets quiet when there's a big predator nearby. Thanks, but no thanks. Story 16. One time when my little sister and I wandered off in Superstore, a strange man was standing behind us in the toy aisle, and I was getting super weird vibes about him. Keep in mind, I was only 9 or 10. He also looked super shady. Big hoodie, dark sunglasses, you name it, just screaming serial murderer. So obviously, my first thought was just to move away from him because we could look at different toys anyway. Nope, apparently not. He just kept following us but maintaining a small distance at the same time. Eventually, I whispered to my sister that a man was following us, and we started walking in circles around different aisles to lose him until we found our dad. I remember how he looked at us one last time before walking away. I was scared of strangers for a while after that, even though I was really outgoing as a kid. I was afraid he would follow us home for some reason. And looking back on it now, he could have been trying to snatch us or something, but maybe he just wanted to help. But I'm pretty sure there was something wrong with him. Story 17. This isn't my story, it's an old high school teacher of mine. His friends were bar hopping. They were all underage and traveling to a bar about 45 minutes away. It wasn't like the first time they were doing this or anything at all. All of a sudden, he got a really bad feeling and started panicking. His friends made fun of him and wouldn't let him out of the car. But it got so bad they had to dump him in this small town in the middle of nowhere. He used a payphone to call a cab home. The next morning, he saw that his friends had been in a car accident, obviously due to drunk driving. Most of the friends died. One survived with a severe brain injury. His life was saved all because of a gut feeling. Sometimes he has survivor's guilt now. This one is just heartbreaking. Like, yeah, guy made it out of there and that's great. The gut feeling really saved him there. But just a horrific thing to happen in general. It does go to show, though, drunk driving is never a good idea. Don't drive drunk, and don't get into a car with a drunk driver. It's not worth it. Story 18. Last year, December 1st. I had slept for almost a week trying to fight what I thought was the flu. Woke up, and that exact gut feeling kept on telling me something is not right with me. Called the parents to tell them, and then cabbed myself to the emergency room. Took blood the whole 9 yards. Was there for 8 hours. Discharged and sent home. Called the next morning asking me to come back because they found something in my blood. Bacteremia and endocarditis. I was put on penicillin immediately for 2 months. More tests, more things wrong. Went for a specialized test on December 21st. Woke up to them telling me I needed surgery as soon as possible. They're trying to find a surgical team. Earliest is the 24th. I go in and while they're operating, I have an ascending aortic aneurysm, and it caused an aortic dissection. They're able to fix it. I've got a synthetic valve in there now. Here's the kicker. I work in a restaurant kitchen just before the start of the holiday season. Normally, most cooks would tough it out and just work. Most think, it happens, I'll get better soon. Just keep going. There was just something about the way I was feeling this time that made me go to the hospital. I'm told if I had done that, I more than likely would have died before my birthday, and they would have found out about the aneurysm during the autopsy. That still sends chills down my spine. My best friend works as an emergency room nurse at the same hospital that I was operated on, and she was freaking out internally but kept it together on the outside for me. She explained just how serious this all was after I was in recovery. I have promised to tell her whenever I get that same feeling again. I'm telling you, man, aneurysms freak me out really badly. Maybe it's because my friend had, well, it wasn't quite an aneurysm, but a brain bleed of some description. But they just happen so suddenly with no warning, and it's... Sometimes you don't even know in cases like this, right? Or at least you don't know they're gonna happen. I don't know, it's scary stuff. The gut feeling really did save OP here, and that's... I just hope I get gut feelings like this, is all I'm saying. Anyway, as much relief is in this thread, I felt a lot of tension too. I gotta get up and do some stretches after this or something. But nonetheless, hope you enjoyed. I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.